not really what you'd call a road, more of a dirt path. It wound up the hill to the top outside Cuernavaca. And when I got there, I found the only Benedictine convent in Mexico. The sisters there took me in, and I stayed for a week. On the last Sunday, the priest from a nearby monastery preached about what it was like to have a very special friend, and then said, that friend is Jesus. The sermon was in Spanish, but I found what he was saying so easy to understand, I thought I was really getting immersed in the language. Afterward, I found out he was from Oregon. I was walking down a road. Not so much a road as a wide trail through the Salao. I was going with a new friend, a fellow college student who was a cradle Episcopalian, and later was one of my sponsors at my baptism. She had introduced me to an Episcopal priest who was a brilliant Harvard graduate. He had demolished whatever lingering notions I had about Christians being anti-intellectual, unquestioning rule followers. His wife was a talented artist, and we were walking to an isolated beach where we shared a meal and communion. That priest was Tom Goman, who later died in a disastrous climb on Mount Hood with students from the Oregon Episcopal School in Portland. One of the two students who survived was the son of St. Stephen's, Anne Holiday. I was walking down a road. Not exactly a road, really. It was one of the lonely stretches of Highway 101 on the Oregon coast. I was headed for a library conference in San Francisco, hoping to find a job. It was getting dark, and I was wondering how I would find a place to spend the night. A car pulled over, and the driver offered me a ride. It turned out that he was a monk from Mount Angel Abbey, a brother of the priest I'd heard preach in Cuernavaca. He told me that the preacher whose sermon had so much power for me was the Abbey's librarian. He took me to the bus station in Eugene and gave me the fare to San Francisco. I was walking down a road. Not a road at all. It was a shadowy path through the woods at the Anglican Order of St. Helena's House in Vales Gate, New York. One of the sisters was walking with me, listening to my story, from my strict fundamentalist childhood to my college days in Mexico, my baptism by Pat Tomter, later becoming involved with the community at St. Mark's Cathedral in Seattle until David Hanson and I were engaged on the front porch of the Seattle house, and at last marrying, moving to New York, and starting our family. When I described the convent in Cuernavaca, she told me she had been there also, on retreat with the other sisters in her Benedictine order. I was walking down a road. Actually, it was a city street in Boston, and I was frantically running. David was a visiting scientist at MIT, and I had gone sightseeing. I was carrying my infant daughter and had just emerged from the subway. I believe it was the Red Line. My disorientation was exacerbated by Julian's insistent screams that were telling me she wanted to be fed somewhere quieter and now. staying? How would I find the street? Who could help me? I came around a corner and nearly collided with a plump little nun on crutches. I can't remember exactly what she said, but when I described the building, she explained how to get there so calmly and gently that I was comforted just by that fleeting encounter. I was walking down a road. Not a road as such, but a way. It was the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, the ancient pilgrimage route across Spain. I had never walked this far before, and now I was putting one foot in front of the other across muddy trails, dusty remnants of Roman roads, and along busy highways for 400 miles until our family reached our destination. As we walked, we made many friends. Retired Dutch Air Force pilots, a Norwegian merchant marine, a hospitalero named Julian Campos, whose ministry at the refugio where we stayed one night truly exemplified hospitality. His father was Spanish and his mother was from India. And further down the road, we met him again as a pilgrim, and he showed us a photo of when he had worked with Mother Teresa. I was walking down a road. This was another pilgrimage route, St. Cuthbert's Way. And after climbing stiles, dodging sheep dung in pastures, passing by ruins of abbeys and reminders of centuries of bloodshed, we were stepping squishily through the mud of the tide flats between Northumberland and the Holy Isle of Lindisfarne. The way was marked by tall poles, about every 50 feet, and the salt water erased our footsteps until at last we came to the island. After the buses left and the causeway was submerged by the incoming tide, the Holy Isle was very quiet. Surrounded by sunset, the priory ruins were windows to the sea. The prayers that have been said for 14 centuries at the little church there continued at evening prayer and an early morning Eucharist. In that fellowship, the breaking of the bread and the prayers, there was a sense of communion that spanned geography, time, and culture. The beauty of the Lindisfarne Gospels, the wildflower garden that restores the habitat of birds and butterflies, the familiar responses of the Psalms, were all part of a peace which passes understanding. So, all these roads have led me to the same place. Here we are at yet another crossroads, reminded, as Peter tells us today, that our relationship with Christ was destined before the foundation of the world, revealed at the end of the ages. We are all walking down the road to Emmaus. We say, "The Lord is risen indeed," but do we recognize the way, the truth, and the life in our companions when we are called to see the face of Christ in each other?